this might be the shocking sentence that comes out of my mouth on Finish or Fail, but I just finished watching Mahou Shoujo Site. How'd you feel about Mahou Shoujo Site?
I'm really surprised that we were able to watch all of it, and that even when it started falling apart at the end, it was still like a watchable product.
I would honestly say that this is like the same way I felt about like Occultic 9 in 2016. A show that I feel like starts off really promising, even if it has a lot of obvious reasons that other people aren't going to like it, and it's obviously not a masterpiece, but
yeah,
like...
but it's upfront with that, like the girl with the giant tits. It's like, hey, we know that this is trash.
They don't try to like convince you that it's anything other than it is, but it puts a lot of effort into being as good as it can be at being what it is.
Yeah.
You know? And we'll get into that more as we go. It was just kind of a surprise to even think that this show was watchable, because most of the anime coming out right now that I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy more than this one in concept, or just like, you know, this show is extremely edgy, and I know a lot of people are going to hold that against it right out the gate, and I'm not really usually into edge-fest shows, but that's usually because edge-fest shows go for a certain aesthetic of like... I mean, this show doesn't even not do that, because it has, like, all the faces that are, like, churning in wild fucking directions, but it's, like, so over the top that it's closer to, like, JoJo than it is to, like, Angels of Death, you know?
Yeah.
In terms of how fucking ridiculous people's faces can get. But, why don't you describe, like, the plot of this show for me?
So there's a girl, she goes to school, is horribly bullied, her big brother, like, beats the shit out of her every day. She wants to kill herself. Like, she's walking to school and she, like, just stands by the train tracks and is like, I want to die, I want to die. And, like, people are like... People are walking by and they're just like, oh, jeez.
The first episode of this show is Midori-esque.
Yeah, it's very much like, this is the most unfortunate girl.
Yeah.
Like...
It's like, if you've ever watched a lot of, like, really old school anime, or, like, just other shows that involve bullying as a major feature, like, they will often create this scenario where it's not just that this character is, like, beaten down, but that, like, everyone in society is impossibly evil.
Yeah.
And, like, this show goes so far with it that it's clearly doing it on purpose. Like, we watched Happy Sugar Life earlier this year, and we didn't end up finishing it. And that show had a similar kind of outlook of, like, everyone's duplicitous and evil kind of thing. But even in that show, it was, like, innocent compared to this one.
Yeah.
Or this show, like, everyone is on a maximum, I don't give a fuck about anybody but myself at all times.
Everyone in this universe is terrible.
Like, when the main girl, like, almost jumps in front of the train in episode 1, but then she stops herself because she, like, hears a voice... The other people who, like when the train passes and everybody starts crossing, they're just like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Fucking... That was the best part. That, like, really sold it. Like, yeah, this kind of thing can exist in this universe, so...
Yeah.
Like, if you
get yourself ready for it. If you can
accept up front that the show's just gonna have everybody in the world be like, shit, like, then you can kind of,
it gets you into the mood, too.
Yeah.
Because... The idea of this show is that it's going to be about, like, extremely beaten down people gaining a massive amount of power and doing something with it, you know? And I felt like it was kind of powerful in a way that the force that controls everything, they call them the site administrators. We don't know much about them yet. But they basically run these magical girl websites that will call out to the most unfortunate girls. And they go on this website and they are sent a stick, as they call it, a magical stick, which is just some kind of magical girl item that gives them a power. Mm-hmm. But the powers are, like, really fucking powerful. It's not like baby shit. They can, like, stop time and fucking heal people from death and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, so the main girl, she has, like, a gun that teleports people to wherever she imagines.
They also do the puppy killing thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah, they kill her fucking cat.
Which is, like, kind of another, like, calling card of this kind of story, like...
This show is
Like,
about
type.
your, as you call it, the moe and the guru.
The moe and the girl. You gotta have like the moe girls.
It's
and
the yin
they
yang
have
of
like
the moe and the guru.
Yeah, there's like one girl who's an idol who's like really happy and like it's like super moe, and then she lives in a guru world.
Yeah, she wants to kill people very badly.
I think that's kind of the appeal of like shows like this. It's like
this show does a perfect job of marrying like exactly those two aspects. It's not like cute and violent. No, it's specifically moe and guru. Because like the tropes of how everyone is tortured in the show is very guru-esque. Yeah. Again, it's very Midori. It's just like everyone in society is beating up on this girl as badly as they could get away with on TV. And it's kind of interesting that up until the very last scene, in like a weird comedic way, there is no sexual violence in the show. The characters, there's usually a threat of it, but it never actually happens to anybody. And
which is like you would expect a bunch of like tortured girls, somebody to be like molested or something like that.
Well, and they obviously suggested it so that would be accounted for. Like, we're not going to pretend like that wouldn't happen. But I thought it was interesting because obviously part of it is we can't show that on TV, and part of it is also just accessibility. Like, I can sell my story to more people if it doesn't have a rape scene in it. Yeah. But also it made me think about the idea that like in stories like this, there usually is some element of sexual abuse. And I feel like everybody looks at that as like, in today's society where that's like the most heinous thing you can do to somebody without killing them, it's like, that is really looked at as like the final thing. Like, if you've been raped, then it's like, oh, well then all bets are off. You can have your revenge.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of like a really easy way.
Right.
Like, for storytellers to kind of just be like, oh, if I incorporate rape, and it's just kind of like low. Yeah. Like, it's a low blow.
Right, and it's also easy to make that titillating for the audience.
Yeah, but...
and stuff like that. Like, it's easy to try to, like, you can sensationalize it and make it no longer what it's supposed to be. So, like, and in this show, like, in spite of the fact that they don't push it into rape, like, this girl gets the shit beat out of her, like, regularly. So, you can fully accept she is, like, one of the most downtrodden people in society. Like, regardless of the threat of the sexual violence, like, the fact that she doesn't get raped, it doesn't change anything. Like, it wouldn't add anything to her character. It wouldn't make her any more justified.
That's why I'm glad they kind of kept it out of that.
Right. It was like, we don't need this to happen, but we're going to make sure we know, that, like, of course, we're not saying this is a world where it would never go that far.
Like, I was kind of hoping that if they did incorporate it, it'd be, like, more tasteful or realistic, but by the end of the show, they have, like, the brother character, and he gets raped by, like, the bad guy, and it's just, like, wow.
Spoilers. But yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
The ending is really fucking
weird.
The
ending is really bad. Should we cut that out?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean that. I didn't want to, like, spoil the show for anybody, but...
Well, we're not necessarily going to come away recommending this show, I don't think. Even though I think it is... This is, like, a weird one where it's like, man, it's kind of good, but it's also got, like, big issues that make it, like, well, I don't know, go read the manga,
Yeah.
Like, because the manga is 12 volumes and it's still going. And the anime suffers very badly from, like, trying to have a satisfying ending within the span of 12 episodes, with an incomplete manga, So, the first half has this steady build-up of, like, the first episode's mostly just the main character getting the living shit kicked out of her, and just wanting to fucking die. And, but it's in, like, such a comically over-the-top fashion that you're, like, excited for when is she gonna get some kind of comeuppance. When is her power going to come into play? So she gets her power and she ends up accidentally murdering 2 of the bullies by teleporting them in front of a train, which they get hit by. But she is, like, not okay with this. She's not, like, into the revenge. She's just like, oh god, I fucking killed people.
Yeah.
But she meets this other girl who's a magical girl who can stop time. And her mentality is like, yeah, fuck all these people, they're terrible. And she, like, cuts the throat of one of the bullies while time has stopped. Doesn't kill her, but cuts her throat. Who she ends up becoming a major character later. And all throughout these early episodes, the show really goes out of its way to make everyone kind of unlikable. that like everyone's supposed to be an asshole because this is like a game of like living in a world where everybody's bad. Um, how do you like? What decisions do you make? You know, the bullies, like in the early episodes, the characters are basically you've got the bullies who like there's this trio of girls who want to fuck with the main character girl. You've got the main character and the time travel girl, and like main character girl, you know, she hasn't done anything wrong. She's just downtrodden. She's broken. She wants to die. Then you got yellow girl who, like, because of the fact that she's been victimized, doesn't care about people, will just flagrantly slit people's throats, doesn't give a shit. She's like, these people are worthless. Don't worry about them. Still easily the most likable character in the show, because I don't necessarily disagree with the people she's chosen to slit the throats of, you know, but, like, whatever. So then you get the idol girl, and she's like cutesy and fun moe girl, but she also is like a psycho evil, like she literally wants to murder. You've got another magical girl who's the magical girl hunter, who goes around and just kills other magical girls, like flat out. So in the beginning, it's like very dark, very edgy. Everyone's trying to kill each other or like, you know, pick themselves up from like the bottom of society. As the show goes along, it eventually reaches a point where it becomes magical girls versus system administrators, and when it becomes this distant from reality, the show becomes like so much of an action spectacle and requires so much more explanation for everything to happen. And it also introduces all these characters because, like, obviously in the form of a long-running manga, there'd be time to introduce a character every once in a while and give him a backstory and then have a plot twist and then have some characters and some plot and some character, but like they're trying to get to a certain point in the story that will have the most emotional resonance to end this story on. And so it's just kind of like all of a sudden 4 new characters arrive. We barely learn shit about them. All this plot stuff happens. People are fucking, there's betrayals, there's like all this stuff going on. What feels like a carefully plotted story, but one that's being rushed so fast that none of it means anything, you know?
Yeah, I definitely got that feeling.
Until you get to the last episode, and that finally resolves sort of the emotions that were left hanging way back in, like, episode 6.
Yeah.
And then the ending, you know? But even in the period where it starts going off the rails in terms of the plot, is where it has still some of the best scenes because of the brother becoming one of the best villains I've seen in a while. How did you feel about any of this?
Well, I thought the brother was a really great villain. Like, they did a really good job at, like, the actor did a really good job playing him, and he seemed, like,
hamming it up, like, fucking crazy.
He seemed very Akira-esque. And I thought it was, like, really funny that, like, he was able to charm the idol girl.
Yeah, so easily.
And just, like, manipulate her. And
I just love that they made him as much of a sociopath as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
They just went all out. They were like... And again, that's like what's great about the show is that it is crazy over the top. Like, it's a world where everyone's as bad as they could be. And so the brother who just beats the shit out of her all the time, like, at first, he's just like this spoiled, smart kid who beats up his sister, and he seems like a minor character. But they keep, like, having him in the background and in, like, the next episode previews just being a creeper.
Yeah.
And he's super memorable. You're like, what is up with the brother? Like, is he going to be the main bad guy eventually? And then, yeah, like, once he catches on about, like, the whole magical girl thing, because to be a magical girl in this world just means to have a stick. You can use any stick, and you'll have that stick's power, but, like, it drains your life every time you use it. So, eventually, he catches on that he can get these sticks, and because he is, like, legitimately an extremely smart, scheming guy, he fucking just, like, runs roughshod over everybody. There's a scene where he beats down this otaku character, like, just verbally destroys him and then makes him kill himself.
Yeah.
And it's fucking epic. It's just straight up epic. And then, like, after he makes the otaku kill himself, he's like, I didn't feel bad at all. Like, for some reason, I don't even care. And then he has, like, kind of an arc as, like, the villain. But there was one moment that kind of, I would say, ruined the entire series for me in a way, because it was, like, the jumping the shark moment, which is when the brother catches, like, all 9 of the magical girls off guard, and all he has to do is, like, he comes in and he's wearing the idol girl's panties, which are her item, her stick that allows her to control people by just telling them what to do. And so he walks in the room and he just says sit, and all the girls are just stuck. And it didn't even seem like the power quite worked that way before. Like, they kept it ambiguous enough that you weren't sure, like, how strong it was. So the whole scene, it just felt like, man, none of these girls thought to use their powers first. Like, because they've all been, like, well battle-hardened. There's been scenes throughout the show where, like, Time Stop Girl has stopped time just in the nick of time to stop people, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, in this episode, like, she had ample time when the brother came in to do something, and he just comes in and immediately wrecks everybody's shit. And it's like, they're not even threatening, you know?
It kind of defeats a lot of the build-up that they're kind of doing. I have a lot of problems with the characters' motivations in the show. Like, they all team up together to, like, save the world, and they all are like, oh, we want to be good guys, but they live in a world where, like, you wouldn't... Why would you think that these girls want to work together to stop this?
That's another thing about how, like, just in the middle of the show, it just kind of becomes a clusterfuck.
Yeah, and, like, the pink-haired girl who, like, previously was, like, killing magical girls to get their power because she was told, like, the Tempest is coming. But, like, as soon as she learns about a little bit of something else, she, like, completely jumps ship and...
changes
like,
the motivation.
Yeah, it's really hard to, like, understand, like, what she is.
I mean, it's funny because it reminded me a little bit of Ginga Nakaraboshi Gin.
Yeah.
Where they're, like, gathering all the dogs, and it's just, like, they just keep getting more and more in this pack to go take on the apocalypse kind of thing. Because the conceit in this show, I guess, is that these magical girls have been given these sticks, and... the blonde girl seems to think that they are just on a mission to, like, cleanse the world. Like, that's the narrative she's given herself. Is like, yeah, we were given these powers so we could just kill normies and, like, make things better for us, like, troubled people, you know?
Yeah, because she's lived her whole entire life trying to get revenge on the guy that, like, murdered her family, so...
Yeah.
She has, like, some whack sense of value.
And she has him set up in a torture chamber.
Yeah, that was, like, a lot.
Yeah. So, then, meanwhile, there's... like, the early girls that we meet, you've got the idol girl who, like, she just wants to get revenge on the idol killer girl for killing her partner. An idol killer girl is just trying to kill all the idols and take their items because there's something called Tempest coming, and basically it suggested that the only way you'll make it through the... like, everyone's gonna die in the world, in the Tempest. And the only people who are gonna survive are people who have gathered enough, like, negative energy, I guess... which is stored into these items, but then I'm not really sure why they even have the need to use the items. Like, aren't they gathering negative energy?
I think that they just kind of, the administrators gave the items to the girls so they can create more negative energy, because that's, like, the whatever kind of, like, presence.
So just, like, getting revenge and stuff and, like, perpetuating the cycle of violence.
Yeah, because, like, the girls are willing to throw their lives away. That's why at the end it's, like, boys won't do, because girls are the ones that are, like, more willing to throw their lives away and participate. And I think it's kind of, you know, symbolic that little girls, like, don't really have a whole lot of power, and that's where a lot of...
I was trying to get into that earlier. Just the idea that, that the administrators, they seem to have taken the outlook of, like, we want to find the most downtrodden people in society. So, like... the answer is always going to be a young girl who's gotten the shit kicked out of her whole life and or is an absolute murdering psychopath.
Yeah.
Like, those are the two options of who is going to lay down their lives for
yeah, who's going to create the most fucking chaos. And...
right. And, yeah, I thought that was neat. There's also a trans kid, because they like, they're like, oh, it has to be a girl, and then they, like, pick her and, like, the other girls are like, oh, they must have just gotten confused. It's like, no, I think the trans kid who's constantly bullied, like, we see her just getting bullied, like, all the time for being trans. Like, yeah, I think they have a reason to choose this kid as well. But yeah, like, I liked that idea that, like, they were finding the most misfortunate people and, like, everything that happens to them... the only thing that's truly over the top about the things that happen is that they all happen to the same people, but it's nothing, like, unrealistic. It's, like, all real social problems that happen.
Except for the blonde girl. kidnapping the murderer guy and chaining him up and torturing him. I would say that
well, that's because she has power. Like, that's what she does with her power.
Yeah.
I don't think she did that before she had the powers.
But the positions that these girls are in isn't really that hard to like, imagine that somewhere somebody could be living this shit of a life.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this show is highly... I think it would be relatable to anyone who's been, like, abused in any way.
I like that they have the trans kid getting bullied, because it's kind of like, this is a real social issue.
Right. Like, all the characters are going through some real shit.
Yeah.
Even if it's, like, a little extreme the way they portray it. But then, like, that's the idea of the setting, is that it's an over-the-top action setting where, like, everything's fucking crazy. And it reminds me of, like, something like Go Nagai would make, you know? Just, like, everyone's a complete monster, and that's what makes it fun to watch them kill each other. But, like, it also reminds me a little bit of, like, Mirai and Nikki, but better. Because, like, the powers do more and are more interesting in the way that they interplay with each other. But again, the first half of the show is just so much more cleanly told than the second half. And, like, around the time when... So the blonde girl, like, her motivation was she wanted revenge on the person who killed her family. But once she got him, she just hooked him to a torture device because she's like, I don't know how to live without this revenge. So then they kill the guy. Like, he gets killed. So her motivation is gone. And eventually, she will say, basically, that the main character became her will to live. Mm-hmm. But, like, we don't really see that happen. And, like, it would have been one thing if she had come to that realization before the guy was killed, or immediately afterwards if she had to find a new reason to live. But instead, because that's right when the plot just gets moving in earnest, it's just kind of glossed over. Like, nobody says anything about the fact that she doesn't have a motivation anymore, you know? And the same thing happens when they introduce all four of the new characters. We don't really know, like, they seem to just be there because they're like, oh, I guess... Now that we all understand what Tempest is, we should all work together to stop it. But, like, if that was the case, Pink Hair Girl had no reason to be killing magical girls in the first place. She should have just been going around telling them that Tempest was coming, let's work together. But, like, she was just murdering them because the assumption was that you need to have the most weapons. But it seems as though once everybody understands that Tempest is coming and they decide to team up against the site administrators... Now she's just, like, along for the ride.
Yeah.
Because I guess maybe she no longer believes that you need as many as possible. I don't really know. But, like, she's just in the group.
I think she just tried to be, like... They kind of tried to just make her a psychopath. Like, they just kind of gave up on developing her character and giving her motivation. It's just like, let's put her in a place where she kills people. That's when she
And
thrives.
things get really stupid when they decide to throw in a beach scene. Because, like...
Yeah.
It was very clear that right after everybody had joined the team was the only moment that it would have made sense in the story for this to happen at all. Not to say that it should have happened at all. Because, like, this show is about, like, deeply traumatized and victimized little girls being forced to participate in, like, a death game.
Yeah.
Nothing about this made me want to see them in their bathing suits in, like, a sunny, happy day episode. But, like, that's what we got, and it was really awkward because we didn't know who half the characters were because they were all new.
Yeah.
It's like all these girls suddenly show up, and now it's a beach episode because, like, shortly after this, you know, one of them's going to die, and then the rest of the show's going to be fighting. So it's like, here's where we have the chance. But, like... You want one of these in a scene where you like all the characters and you know something about them, you know? Or
not to, like, oh, these are the characters, let's throw some sloppy swimsuit.
Yeah.
The swimsuits were bad. Like, they did not look good in swimsuits.
No. So...
Like, the blue-haired girl did a little bit, but, like, it's... why even bother?
Yeah.
I think it was kind of an excuse for them to try to build up a little bit of characterization and also get them all together when they can have, like, the big brother...
Yeah.
break in and steal the shit.
Right.
But
it was just... It felt very
really
lazy.
Weird.
It felt weird and out of place because, like, up until that point, it had been such a stark and, like, dark and, you know, everyone was always against each other, and it was like every decision had to be made carefully, and now suddenly everybody's at the beach in one fucking group, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it went from it matters who knows what to, like, we're all on the same team in that amount of time, you know? And then the administrators were not particularly interesting villains, because we don't learn enough about them to really know what the fuck's going on. So, like, the older brother was a great villain, because he was just a fucking psycho who had some really hilarious scenes, but he doesn't end up being the final boss of the arc. It kind of continues on from there into the next arc. Like, it feels as though the show was timed around when they would have the emotional scene between the two main girls. Like, that scene is a big emotional payoff. They did as much of the story as they needed to get to that scene, and then it just kind of ends right after that emotional payoff, which is fine. I don't mind when a show goes for putting the most emotional moment at the climax. It's just that we had to do so much to get there that by then it didn't have the same impact. Like, this revelation that the two characters have, which is basically that, like, they want to live for each other's sake, like, this is the power that they found that will make them no longer suicidal, should have come right after the guy she was getting revenge on died. Like, right after she had lost her will to live, there should have been a scene like this between these two girls. Because they'd already gotten really close by that point. They'd already had their little Yuri bath scene. They were already, like, you know, being heavily shipped by me. So, like, by this point, they should have been already having this moment. But instead it comes at the end of the show, right before the older brother gets ass-raped. And it's, like, kind of not clear if it's meant to be played for laughs. Because it kind of feels like it's meant to be satisfying, you know?
Yeah, it was... I'm
it
like
felt
kind
like a comedy
of
scene. It was
uncomfortable
weird.
with the amount of male rape that's, like, in modern anime.
Yeah.
Like, with Banana Fist and this.
Fucking
I just have never
Fist.
seen so much.
Well, Banana Fist was originally from the 90s.
Yeah, but still. That wouldn't have flied on TV.
So let me talk about the best scene in Mahou Shoujo site, in my opinion. Which is early into the show, maybe episode 5 or so. Because, again, throughout the early part, it's like, things don't immediately get crazy weird, but it's obvious they're going to. Because the powers, while they can do, like, really insane stuff, like, for the most part, the characters are just, like, in school. You know, they're doing fairly normal shit. And, like, there are some big fights where a fucking girl, like, uses a yo-yo to tear down a building, and that's pretty crazy. Like, after that, the characters just have to go back to school, like normal. But there's this great scene where, so the main girl, has slowly had, her bullies are being subtracted from the class, and people who are her allies are being added in, right? Which was a lot of fun, and it's unfortunate this stopped being a thing after a little bit after this. But, like, so she's got the blonde girl and the idol girl in her class, and idol girl super wants to kill this pink-haired bitch, who is the magical girl slayer, and she's been hospitalized for a while. She's finally out of the hospital. She comes and she joins the class, and immediately blue-haired girl gets up on her desk and is like, "You bitch, I'm gonna kill you." And, like, no one has any idea what the fuck is really going on here. So, like, between the 4 magical girls who are in the room is an entirely different story playing out from the story that the normies around them are witnessing. And the main girl, Aya, she's, like, trying to participate in this in a way that doesn't draw attention to her in the classroom setting. Not quite understanding that blue-haired girl is going to murder pink-haired girl. Like, it's gonna happen. These girls have superpowers. Like, this is a much bigger deal than a classroom setting.
Yeah.
And, like, if this murder happens, it could have consequences towards, like, the end of the world that's coming soon, you know? So, like, yellow-haired girl is like, we have to, you know, act on this like it's a serious fucking thing, while Aya's trying to act on it in, like, a clumsy, embarrassed school kind of way. And the way the scene plays out is just really funny and great, and, like, there's a part at the end when they've, like, subdued the girl. They had to take the pinnacle of the scene is that Aya has to remove the idol girl's panties.
In the middle of class.
Yeah, because her panties are what gives her mind control powers. So she pulls the panties off and, like, holds them over her head. And it's a glorious, hilarious scene. Because the whole class, all the guys start cheering and shit. And the teacher's just like, what the fuck's going on? And Blue Girl, as soon as her panties are gone, she's powerless. So she just starts crying like a baby. But, like, in the middle of this scene where all this is going on, blonde girl just grabs the panties and fucking runs. Because she's like, let's stay real. Let me get these panties and get out of here. It was just a really great fucking scene. And I wanted more like that.
Yeah, I would have liked more classical
like
scenes
that.
because that kind of like was the strongest point in the show. Like, a good way to develop characters, a good way to kind of like build world build and stuff.
It was really fun to watch the main girl, like, who, you know, in spite of all the bad things that were happening to her, like, she was slowly gaining friends and, like, a foothold in, like, some reason to be hopeful about life.
Yeah.
And, my favorite thing about this show is just, like, how suicidal the characters are. That, like, the fuck is that noise?
Just me scratching my hands.
The fact that the girls are, like, all ready to die. They're all super depressed. Like, really bad shit's happened to them. And, like, because of that, there's this weird tenor to the show where it's like their powers use up their life force. But all of them are kind of okay with this because they all want to die.
Yeah.
Like, they were all suicidal from the beginning. So they get a power that it's like, oh, well, this is killing me. Well, maybe I can die faster. Or maybe I'll do something with the power that helps somebody. So it's like killing two birds with one stone. I'm killing myself and I'm doing something worthwhile for once in my godforsaken life, you know? But through doing something worthwhile for once, you also gain, like, some extra hope and, like, feelings of confidence. Like, maybe you're not just a victim. Maybe you can help with something, you know? And so, yeah, I like that as the show is going along. And that was, like, that scene is kind of the pinnacle of it. But I also like how it was, like, this small story where all the girls, like, had to keep secrets from each other, and it was all very close to the chest, and death seemed imminent. Like, it seemed like anybody could die at any moment because there was a lot of violence, and, like, a lot of gory shit was going on, and, like, you know, in the first episode, they'd killed the two bullies, like, outright. Just bam, 2 people dead right off the bat. And then blonde girl had just slit the one girl's fucking throat at one point. Pink-haired girl had been hospitalized, and it seemed like she was going to get killed. But then, when it gets to a point where, like, nobody's really died yet, and we've got, like, 10 magical girls, it's like, shouldn't we have lost, like, a bunch of these yet already? And that's when you start to settle in that, oh, this is a long-running manga. Oh, this is going to have, like, an epic narrative. Oh, this is not going to end with the anime. Like, there's probably a lot more ground this hasn't covered. Like, once that kind of stuff starts to settle in, you realize that the rest of the anime series is probably going to be a write-off. Like, this is not going to go far enough to be satisfying as a manga adaptation, especially if we're not going to learn about all these fucking characters that got introduced.
That's, again, I was, like, kind of sad when they introduced all, like, half the cast is from another school, and, like...
Yeah. And we never learn anything about it.
Exactly. I do like the white-haired girl with the eye patch, with the power that she, like, cuts herself and then feeds people
she's
her
great.
blood.
She's the last one we learn about that's really good.
Yeah.
I love
her.
her.
Like, really plays on that idea that they have to, like, kind of hurt themselves.
Yeah.
To use
the
powers.
That's what she was my favorite because she's a character who is so depressed that she would just be dead. Like, she would have killed herself by now. But since she was given this power, like, she's trying to make something of herself. But if she gets criticized harshly enough, she'll just, like, be like, all right, fuck it then. You know? Because she has, like, handfuls of medication. This is another one of those, like, character details that get swept under the rug as the show goes on.
Exactly. That's what... She, like, has to take all these pills all the time because she's, like, flying off the handle. Yeah. Then they just stop with that bit.
I think they show it once.
Like, yeah, they show it in that episode, but then she's, like, constantly in all the episode after that, but they never ever address the fact that she has, like, serious anxiety.
All she's there for is to be a healer at that point.
Yeah.
Like, but the most interesting thing about her was that if she even got so much as criticized, it was enough to shake her foundation that if she didn't take these pills, she was just gonna kill herself.
Yeah.
So she's, like, holding on by the thinnest imaginable thread. And I was, like, so... And also her power is that, like, she cuts herself and uses her blood to heal people, and she's just like, well, I cut myself anyway, so whatever, you know, and I was just jealous. Like, I saw that character and I was like, I wish I had thought of this character. Like, this is my brand of edge.
Yeah.
I think that's why I like this show, is because it is my brand of edge in a lot of ways. Like, main girl having, like, the dark circles under her eyes, she's super adorable. The fact that, like, the powers can be, like, they can get insanely violent, and, like, the story ultimately has like an end of the world slant to it. Like the Tempest is serious business. It's not like it's not as nebulous as something like Madoka, where it's like, oh, it's just this endless cycle perpetuating itself, and then Madoka like sacrifices herself for everybody throughout all of history. This is more like direct. It's like if you have a magical item, and if you can survive and do well enough, you can make it through the Tempest.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, like, a lot more of the onus falls on the girls. They're less, like, backed into a corner. They're not, like, being forced into this situation. They all chose to be magical girls. They are choosing to shorten their lifespans, using the items to do things with them, and they are choosing to try to fight their way through the Tempest and survive to the next era, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, I like that as opposed to the way that other shows have been handling it.
Yeah.
And just the fact that, like, unlike something like Magical Girl Raising Project, I think that what's strong about this show is how it doesn't go too cute. Like, that show tried to have, like, all, like, the super adorable girls, and when they die, it was always really sad, and they'd play the sad music and everything.
Yeah, but it's, like, a bunch of characters that we have no reason to give a shit about.
Right.
Because, like, we know it's a death game going into it. We know all these characters are gonna die, so stop.
Well, they try to make them seem so pure and innocent.
Yeah.
And this show is like, look, these girls they're cute, and they have, you know, like, good hearts deep inside, but a lot of them are fucking monsters. Like, they are crazy. They are over the edge. They will kill people and each other, and, like, without hesitation, you know? Like, they are fucking psycho. And I like that about it. That it goes all out and lets the characters be, like, really... Because they've been so fucking beaten down, and the society they're in is so provably bad that it's like, why wouldn't they be this way? Like, they are heroes for being this way in a world like this, you know? Another thing about this show. So, obviously, most of these shows that we've talked about on Finish or Fail, I've been really harsh on the visual presentation. This show looks fine. There's no egregious CGI. There's no, like... There is some, like, multimedia stuff, but it's done well. It usually draws attention to itself. The tone is good. But more importantly, the sound design is really great.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the voice acting could get a little obnoxious sometimes when characters are going, like, way over the top and just, like, hamming it up, and it was, like, ugly. But they always would contort the faces to the max. They did everything to the max. It was always, like, hilariously over the top. But the music would be fascinating sometimes, where they'd be playing songs that are like just like a hip-hop beat, like, background song with, like, just a thick layer of drone and, like, stormy noises over it to convey how, like, insane the girls are, or, like, really good tension spikes all done through the soundtrack. Yeah, just, like, really great melding of soundtrack and sound effects. Overall good music, although the OP and ED both suck. IMO.
I have to concur. Isn't Kizuna Ai in this?
Kizuna Ai is a voice actress in this. I think she voiced one of the admins or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Site Conrening 8. So she's one of the site admins.
I see.
The music is by Keiji Inai. I'm looking at the staff page. Anything else you want to say about this show? We've gone on for like 40 minutes.
It was kind of hard to tell, like, to keep track of who had what items, because there was a lot of, like, girls stealing each other's items.
Yeah, that was super confusing.
It would always be, like, one scene, like, this girl has an item, the next scene, like, oh, she doesn't have her item, and, like, who would have it? Because there's, like, several people who could have stolen it, and it's just, like, it's kind of hard to pay attention to, like, keep track of it all.
That's another big problem that happens after that.
Especially when they throw in, like, a bunch of new characters, and it's like all their items are getting shuffled up, and it's like, okay.
I would definitely say there's, like, a definitive moment when this show, like, plunges from where, like, there was a point where I was gonna give it, like, an 8, where I was, like, riding high.
I really liked the first half of the show, but, like...
Yeah, episodes, like, 5 and 6, like, not just the first half, but it keeps getting better at first. Like, it goes from, like, just really edgy to, like, the plot gets moving, and then it's interesting, and there's big fights,
really
and there's crazy,
like, characters in,
twists.
And then it's just, it's like, this all went wrong.
And then,
somehow.
like, pretty much the moment that, like, pink-haired girl just shows up, and she's like, I'm on your team now, and I've got 4 allies. And then, like, from then on, the show aside from the older brother scenes, and I do think the emotional climax in the ending was handled fine.
Yeah.
It was just, like, weird to come at that time. And, like, a lot of the plot twists and revelations in the second half of the show are just not that interesting because you know there's no way it's going to be relevant before the show's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so much stuff that is, like, introducing all these new angles to, like, what the bad guys are doing and stuff, and it's like, well, are we gonna have this all resolved by the end? Like, does this have any thematic meaning to the characters, or are they just along for the ride at this point, you know? Lots of 9 girls standing around hearing a guy talk about the plot,
Yeah.
you know? So overall, way exceeded my expectations for what it was going to be in the first place.
We weren't even gonna watch it, but
yeah,
like
we thought
because
this would
I'm
be
an
skippable.
edgelord, I was like, oh, let's watch this one.
Yeah, I was like, do we even want to try Mahou Shoujo Site? I was surprised how much I liked it, but ultimately let down. But, you know, again, it's not a show I necessarily recommend, but I'm not mad I watched it.
Yeah.
And that's all. We're out of space now.